You've heard from the strong opponents. Dr. Colin Mendelsohn is a retired GP who works now in tobacco harm reduction, founding chair of the Australian Tobacco Harm Reduction Association. He wrote a book called Stop Smoking, Start Vaping. Now, he doesn't work for the vaping industry. I want to say that up front. He says he's never taken money from them. Dr. Mendelsohn, morning.
Morning, Neil.
What does this decision mean to public health, in your view?
Well, we've created a huge problem by the way we're currently regulating vapes. When Greg Hunt introduced these restrictions 18 months ago, it was to reduce youth vaping and to make these products available to adults. Well, it's actually done the opposite effect to that. You know, the black market took off, youth vaping increased, legal access to adult smokers who need them became dramatically dramatically reduced.
So what's the effect? What's the effect on public health, in your view, if we go ahead with this tougher approach?
Well, it won't work. I mean, we know that the harsh restrictions haven't worked, and doubling down on them will only make things worse. If people want these products, and they do, they'll find ways of getting them. The whole thing will just go underground. A lot of the vapors will go back to smoking, and the system won't be enforceable. We've seen how difficult it is to enforce this model.
Are you worried about children and the vaping?
Look, kids shouldn't vape or smoke, and we need to find a balance so that we can get these products to the adults who need them, because this is the most effective quitting aid we've got. But we need to also restrict access to kids. But I think a lot of the harm to kids is exaggerated. Most kids who've never smoked, who do vape, are just doing it experimentally and short-term. And the evidence suggests it's actually reducing smoking rates, which is our main public health concern.
But
the harm to kids that we've seen so far has been very small.
Is it bad for you?
Look, vaping has been designed as an alternative to quitting smoking. So if you're a long-term smoker, your risk of dying is 2 in 3. 2 in 3 long-term smokers will die. Vaping
we'll all die. What do you mean 2 in 3 will
die? We'll die prematurely.
Okay.
They'll lose 10 years of life on average.
Oh, yes. Okay.
And the most effective way to quit is with vaping. We have very good evidence for that.
But we haven't got any long-term studies on vaping. It hasn't been around long enough, has it?
Well, we don't have long-term studies on anything when it's introduced. Vaping's been around for 20 years. And based on what we know about what's in vapor, the likelihood of long-term harm is going to be very small. The Royal College of Physicians says compared to smoking, it's likely to be no more than 5% of the risk of smoking, because the amount of chemicals is only a tiny fraction of what's in smoke.
Why do you think the government's so dedicated to taking it on then? They're spending $234 million they haven't got. Why?
Well, $234 million compared to $15 billion from tobacco tax is only a very small amount. I think what they're doing is based on ideological and political reasons. I mean, the evidence is very clear about vaping now, and every other Western country is making it more readily available. In the UK, they're handing out 1 million vape kits free to current smokers to help them quit. In New Zealand, they encourage vaping and make it easy for people to get these products because they work. And even with kids, I mean, we're terribly concerned about kids vaping, but the research shows that vaping is actually diverting kids away from smoking. Smoking rates are falling faster than ever in countries where vaping is available. Look, we don't want kids vaping, but the harm that's been attributed to vaping in kids is actually a lot less than we're being told. I think that the minister is being guided by a lot of misinformation about vaping that is being given.
Okay, thank you very much for speaking to us. I'm right, you haven't been, because given the history of the tobacco industry, you haven't been involved with the vaping industry or consulted for it?
I haven't received any money from the tobacco or the vaping industry,
okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Dr. Colin Mendelsohn, a retired GP, chair of the Australian Tobacco Harm Reduction Association.